outside of the important stuff, Todd is a principal engineer at Jackpocket, hex maintainer and organizer of Nerves Conf US. Give a warm round of applause for Todd.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Yes. All right, everybody is a little better looking in the dark, so that's why I left the lights off. Some of you don't need the help. Some of you definitely do need the help. Okay. All right. So thank you for the introduction, Brett. And yes, this is my talk, The Robots Won, or How I Learned to Stop Worrying and Love AI. At Super Simple, that's me on Twitter. I'm still on the Twitter sphere, and that's kind of like the only place I am. So you can find me there. Before I get started with my talk, which is, well, anyway, it's a talk. I wanted to say thank you to these two people and the dog, Bruce and Maggie. So, this is my second time in Chattanooga, and they both curate a very awesome regional conference that I wish more people knew about. Like, I love everybody that's here, but I feel like anybody that hasn't been here yet is missing out on something. So they make it very easy to easy and fun to come down to Chattanooga and meet new people and have fun. So thanks to Bruce and Maggie. And as Brett alluded to, this is about me. So if you really wanted to sum me up in one picture, this would be it. So these are my 4 children, ages 8, 9, 11, and 11. And so that's most of my world is about that. Father of 4, I'm a Christian. I'm a consummate reader. Mostly read nonfiction books, a lot of psychology, behavioral economics books, self-help books. I even read one book by Brené Brown it fought every bit of XY chromosome in my body. And I thought, you know what, maybe I'm not as smart as I think I am and I could learn something. And it actually was a very good book. So I'd recommend it. I'm a maintainer of Hex and, in order of importance maybe, principal engineer at Jackpocket. What is Jackpocket? Well, Jackpocket paid for me to come here, so I am going to do the liberties of letting you know what Jackpocket is. It is a mobile app and web app now that allows you to buy your official state lottery games on your phone. So if you like to play the Powerball, but you don't want to go to 7-Eleven and get a ticket, you can download the Jackpocket app if you're in one of those states or Puerto Rico. And you can buy Powerball tickets or scratch-off tickets from your phone without having to leave home. So if you're interested in any of the things that I've described to you in the last 2 slides, I'd appreciate you coming to talk to me to this, and I could tell you more. All right, slide number 6. We haven't gotten to the talk yet. We're going to keep going. All right, personal update. So before I want to get started, I just want to share like a big thing that happened to me recently in my personal life, which I think was a big win. And so, like, I don't know if this is the right venue to share it, but like, I'm just like super excited about it. So I wanted to share it with everybody. So this happened. So, all right. So this is my box of cables, which I trimmed down a few years ago. Like, it was a lot bigger and messier than this. And lo and behold, I went to Amazon. I almost started to order the cable, and I thought, man, that sounds familiar. I wonder if I have one of these. I went down to the basement. It was still there, wrapped in the package from when I bought it 6 years ago. So when anybody asks you that you live with, why do you keep that big box of cables around? You've got one data point. This one dude, I saw him speak. He was a weird guy. I don't remember much about him, but he had that box of cables for 6 years before he had the cable that he needed. So, all right. Now let's get on to the talk. So this is not a highly technical talk. This is from my Thought Leader series, sometimes called Todd Talks. Okay, so you're not going to get any code. It's called The Robots Won. So this is an allusion to the feature film Dr. Strangelove. I hope this is not as dark or cynical as that. In fact, I hope it's the exact opposite. But I thought it made for a clever title. So has anybody seen Dr. Strangelove? All right, good. So the title is Dr. Strangelove, or How I Learned to Stop Worrying and Learn to Love the Bomb, and it's about nuclear, well, yeah, nuclear tragedy. So leave it at that. All right, I know there was one talk already that used this Terminator illusion yesterday, and we didn't prepare ahead of time, but I'm going to use it again. So I think when we talk about AI, there's a certain contingent of people that think of this. This is not all, but most of the images that you're going to see were generated by Midjourney. So rather than to download this scene from the Terminator, I asked Midjourney to create the image for me. And the reason for that is I thought it would be kind of fun to see like how good and how sometimes bad AI can be, or like how the outcome can be unexpectedly good or unexpectedly bad. So in this case, I think it's good. So this is from one of the first scenes of the 1984 James Cameron vehicle, The Terminator, starring Arnold Schwarzenegger and Linda Hamilton, which Skynet, so eventually the cyborgs sort of take over, and there's a scene where there's a tank rolling over a human skull, but in this case it's a robot skull. All right, that was fun. And so some people look at AI this way, of just like, oh, they took, anybody South Park fans? Yeah, they took our jobs. So for some people, they worry about like this existential crisis. Some people are more practical and be like, I don't care, but as long as they don't take my job. And some people I think are a little more serious about the concerns. And anybody recognize this scene? I know there's, yeah, from 1983's War Games. So that's Whopper right there. And this is back when computers were like fantastical and people didn't understand them. They're like, whoa, computers are going to do everything. And eventually they're going to start their own simulated nuclear war, global thermonuclear war. And that came from Whopper. So what's the point of this slide? The point of this slide is that is probably some reasons to be a little bit cautious of the potential uses for AI. All right. Oh, that's the film. Okay. And this is, I think, the worst case scenario, the black-pilled outlook. Does anybody recognize this guy? What's that? Yeah, the Unabomber. Okay. So this is Midjourney's version of the police sketch of Ted Kaczynski, also known as the Unabomber. So if you don't know about this guy, I call this the most black-pilled outlook. So obviously, the Unabomber took some crazy actions and it's suffered from mental illness and whatnot. But it was all predicated on this belief that the technology was going to ruin society, and so he was doing what he thought was in the best interest of everyone, and tried to like fight against that and prevent technology from taking over. And so I'm taking on this position. So this is Ken Jennings, if you don't know him. So in a number of years ago, they put all the best Jeopardy players against IBM's Watson, which is reminiscent to another IBM project, which I'll talk about later. So IBM Watson played Jeopardy against like this guy who was a 72-day champion of Jeopardy, and is probably, by most people, probably considered to be the best Jeopardy player they've ever had. And so he lost the match against Watson, and this is what he wrote on the last final Jeopardy of the tournament, which is, I for one welcome our new computer overlords, which I think was a sort of a joke, but also sort of his resignation to like, okay, well, if you're going to be in charge, like I'm not your enemy. So I think I'm more in this camp of like, I'll embrace it, like, because I think it is inevitable. So the two questions that I kind of want to explore in this talk is, can AI outperform us as humans, or can AI improve the interactions that we have as humans? So can it replace us, or can it augment us, I guess, in some ways? And by the way, when I use the term AI, it's extremely liberal in this sense, which I think it is. I think in our industry is used very liberally to mean a lot of different things. Just to be clear, like this is supposed to be Ralph Wiggum, by the way, but like I'm doing an AI, and like this is AI. And if you work for a company that says AI, like in their tagline or something, this may very well be what the AI in your company looks like. And so I'm like including everything from machine learning all the way down to nested if-else statements, and I'm calling that AI. So it's a set of logic or heuristics that's or applied algorithms in this case. All right. I thought I'd get more laughs out of the Ralph Wiggum. No? Well, that's how you could tell it came from a generative AI, is his hands are not right. So he's got four fingers and a kind of a thumb on one side. And anyway, all right. So let's talk about how technology has improved our lives in the past. So oil portraits. What am I talking about? So there was a time in our world where if you wanted a picture of somebody, or mostly of yourself, you had to get a portrait painter and you had to sit for it, and he would use oil and he would paint a picture of you. And so this was the only way to get a realistic image of what you looked like at one point in time. And they were hard to get and unique and rare, and like you wouldn't have a picture of your kids going down the slide for the first time, because like you can't pay a guy $1 million and have your kids sit on a slide for 2 weeks while he paints it. So you just didn't have that many portraits. And so technology comes in and we get still photography. And like, to me, this solves the problem better. Like you wanted a picture of your uncle, now you got a picture of your uncle. And now with the phones that we have now and the technology that we have now, you can have 50,000 pictures of your uncle on your person at all times. And so to me, I was never really into oil portraiture before. Like I think I love paintings, and it's easily my least favorite style of painting to look at. And so like photographs to me solve that problem. Like we're no longer stuck looking at oil paintings of wealthy people. And of course this sucked if you were the local portrait painter, right? Like your world just exploded. I was on top of the heap and this technology came in and now my world crashed. But for most people, I would say it was a net improvement to your life. And I think the lesson here, like there's a lesson here, which is like if a technology comes in and is truly better at doing what you have been doing, no matter how much you fight it, it's eventually going to take over, probably. And to like illustrate this example, did anybody know that Kodak actually invented the digital camera in 1975? Okay. A lot of people knew it. A lot of people, I suspect, don't know it. And so what happened was the people at Kodak said, like, this is not us. We're a film company. We invented, the rolls of film is literally our technology. That's what we're known for. And so they had the patent for all this technology and sat on it and chose to, their plan was, if we don't release this to the world, it just won't ever happen, right? And so they did that. And like, where is Kodak now? By the way, this is supposed to be a Kodak camera, which is a Kolb or a clone camera. So anyway, so like this is to me a great business example of what happens when you take an inevitable technology and you try to fight against it. You end up in this folly situation where like Kodak itself was admitted into the Dow Jones Industrial Average in 1930, and which, I don't know, Dow Jones is, hopefully people know what that is, but they basically take the top 30 stocks in the US and they put them in this special category called the Dow Jones Industrial Average. So it basically means you're like one of the companies that America identifies with, that thinks is the most stable company, reliable companies that are going to be around, essentially. So from 1930 until 2004, Kodak was on the stock exchange, and then they were eventually taken off of it in 2004. So after almost 75 years, they were removed. And if you think of like 2004, that's really when I think most people, or at least the people in this room, probably had one of their first or their first digital camera by then. And like just to think how the outcomes for that company could have been so much different had they made some different decisions or decided that, well, film is important, but this is also important as well. So I think this is a great example or illustration of what happens when you take an inevitable victor technology and you fight against it. So, and I guess my takeaway from this is, like I said, I don't like oil portraiture, and so like the outcome, one net outcome. Not only do you have more pictures of your uncle, but like you take all these people that would have been painters painting oil paintings of, the Elon Musk of 1600s France, and you're allowing them now to do more creative things. So instead of painting me something realistic, show me what's like in your mind and what you're envisioning. And so this is a representation of, well, does anybody think this looks like a particular artist? Basquiat, right? So Jean-Michel Basquiat is an American painter, and like this is in his style. This is Midjourney's version of a Basquiat painting, which I think is actually pretty good. So what am I saying? What I'm saying is, like, as a society, we've taken all these talented people that are painters and said, like, dude, that stuff is boring. Like, Elon Musk is boring. Why are you wasting your time and your talent painting Elon Musk all day? I want to see something that's like awesome that no one has ever seen before. And so we've taken and freed those people to use their creative energies, the things that make them, to me, the most human, and to focus that energy towards something else. And so we get the works from the Cubist artists and Impressionists and these modern artists, which to me, a fan of those art forms, to me, that is like a huge net win for society. So thank you, technology, for that. All right. So talked a little bit about that. Now I want to talk about more from the applied algorithm side of things, like what ground have we already seeded? So if you're a person that says, like, no, I'm not going to use that, I'm not going to use applied algorithms, or I'm not going to use GPTs or the new technologies, I want to sort of like admit that we've already seeded some ground in this way. So for years, we've been sort of deferring things to algorithms. And I think like some of the examples that I would use would be like in our code for style and consistency, we've been using tools like Credo or Rubocop for years to normalize our styles, right? So previous to that, you may have somebody reviewing your code and being like, no, this doesn't look quite right, or this doesn't match the style of that, redo it this way or that way. And now we've sort of deferred that to computers. Formatting. So in Elixir 1.6, we got the mixed formatter, bless you. We got the mixed formatter, which solved all those problems of like, how do you format your files? Well, I format them this way. It follows this document algebra that Jose built. And we have all just sort of agreed that when you open an Elixir file, it should be formatted the way that mixed form. I think we've all agreed on that, mostly. Okay. It's very normal to just assume that you're going to format your files before you check them in, and that other people will have done the same. And so we don't talk about formatting anymore. We just don't have the conversation. That's a computer that does that. And I think, like Golang does this a lot too, right? Go format is like super common. I don't know why Ruby format seems to be having a lot of debate in it. If anybody knows, it might be an interesting conversation to have later. Security stuff. How many people use Sobolo? Okay. Yeah, so it's like common to use these to say like there are certain problems that I would want code to be reviewed for, but as a human, maybe I'm not going to review them. I'm just going to trust that these other tools are doing a good job at it. So this is what our CI pipeline looks like at Jackpocket. So we lean real heavily on these tools. So I don't know if this is uncommon or common, or if you're like, man, that's lightweight stuff, or if you're like, holy cow, that's crazy. But we do, in CI, without a person having to look at it, we check run this against the tests, contract tests. We see the database. We do the formatting. We run the tests. We run the security scans. We run container scans. Upload things. Check the title of your PR against a format that we've agreed upon, et cetera. Build documentation, et cetera. So we're leaning heavily on these algorithms already. All right, blank slide. There was probably something really cool here that I was supposed to do, but I forgot. Okay, so anyway, these are the code, like what the code looks like. These are all GitHub actions. So this is all the stuff that runs every time you push code at Jackpocket. So the point of this, I think, is let's let humans do what only humans can do and nothing more. So these tests, so like, why do we perform all these checks in CI? The reason is so people don't have to. And I think the CI tests are really easy for us to delegate because in their best form, they're deterministic, right? They're very consistent. I want to have the same kind of review every single time. Don't tell me to format it this way one week and then that way the other week. And so that's why we do what we do. And I think anything that's purely deterministic in nature, I think, is a real easy candidate to push off of humans and give to algorithms, aka robots. All right. Sorry, 1 second. All right, so before we go much further, I just want to look at like what is our current bar. So if you're saying I want to replace human work with computer work, automated work, AI work, ML work, algorithm work, I think it's probably worth taking a fair assessment of what the current bar is. So you might say, ML is or ChatGPT is not that great, but not great compared to what? So we were having a discussion about documentation out in the other room, and the conversation was like, have you used ChatGPT to write documentation? No, I don't know. It's kind of not that great. Well, what is it not great compared to? The guy that you work with that writes zero documentation or minimal documentation? Like, it's not perfect, but I would argue that it's probably a lot better than what you're currently getting. So let's honestly look at ourselves as humans and say, what is the current bar? And can a computer be better than that? Like, realistically be better than that. Not a human on their best day, but a human on their average day. So are humans really that good? Humans come with a lot of issues. And a lot of this talk is probably born from a specific experience that I've had with a colleague, not a current colleague, and a guy that I'll call him Kevin, and because that's his name, but a guy that I used to work with. And the way I describe Kevin is going to Kevin is like going to the DMV. So you put it off as long as you can. You look for ways, how can I avoid going to the DMV, post office, pick your whatever, agency. You put it off as long as you can. You look for excuses. You look for ways, how can I avoid this? Is it possible that I could just not have a car and walk for the rest of my life, et cetera, et cetera. But eventually it comes down to I have to go to the DMV. And you do it, and when you go there, it sucks just as bad as you thought it was every single time. And that was Kevin. So he did what I needed him to do, but it was always a terrible experience. And I mean, made you feel bad about asking the question, made you feel like you're an idiot for not knowing the answer already, etc. And so I guess that's where I'm coming from is like, can I replace Kevin? All the stuff I go to Kevin with, can I replace it with a robot or literally anything else? So this quote, I heard this quote 5 years ago here in Chattanooga from my friend Mickey Resentes. Anybody know Mickey? We can get a round of applause for her. Okay. She's no longer with us, but no, I'm just kidding. She's just not here. Okay. I'm sorry to tell you, Bruce. You didn't hear. Okay. No, but so 5 years ago at this conference, I came away with this. So she says the hardest problems in tech are people problems. Even the technical problems are usually just people problems. Pretty much all problems are people problems. So if you know Mickey, that sums Mickey up. She's incredibly smart and astute. So the benefits of delegating certain problems to algorithms, AI, whatever you call it, is to reduce those touch points where humans gave the most unnecessary friction or conflict. So what tasks, like what else could be, we talked about Credo and formatting and stuff, but what else is better handled by machines? How much more can we safely defer to them? So that led me to this paper, 1970 paper by Lewis Goldberg called Man versus Model of Man. Has anybody read it, familiar with it? Okay, cool. We're going to learn something today. So this was published in 1970. The full title is Man versus Model of Man, a rationale plus some evidence for a method of improving on clinical inferences. And Goldberg was specifically looking at clinical outcomes for psychiatric patients. But this paper has been researched, studied, and applied many times over the last 60 years, and the data is very consistent. So the synopsis is a model built from the variables experts define as most important in decision making is more accurate at forecasting than the experts themselves. Yes, mind-blowing. So before I get to the results, let's recap this. So if I ask a room of experts, what is the most important thing to look at, or what are the most important things to look at in order, and I make a list of that, and I apply that using a model, I will get better results than the same people who told me what that list was will apply that themselves. So here we are, the results. So over the past 60 years, hundreds of expert studies have been performed and show that the model beats or ties the expert 94% of the time. Bless you. All right, so that's cool. So let's talk about when the results really matter. So this is an anecdote about a guy named Solomon. It is not this Solomon, which is my obligatory biblical reference. This is Midjourney's version of King Solomon, the king of Israel. He was considered, anybody? Okay. Considered to be the wisest man that ever lived. So this is not about him, although I thought it was kind of funny to think about the juxtaposition of him versus GPTs or AIs, of how wise. Anyway, there's something there. There's meat on this bone. I didn't write it into this talk. I'm talking about this guy, a guy named Judge Solomon. Not that guy. That's Malcolm Gladwell. He wrote a book about it. Anybody recognize Malcolm Gladwell? Okay. He's a fun author. It's like candy, reading candy. Anyways, he wrote a book called, what book was this in? Talking with Strangers, about a judge named Solomon, who is a New York State judge. And this judge is tasked with determining the pretrial status of the accused. And so the goal, you could imagine, is I've been accused of a crime, and I go before a judge, and he tells me whether I can be let out before my trial on bail or otherwise, or not, or if I don't get bail and I have to stay in jail. So this is a situation I think that is quite important when the results matter. And so this is Judge Solomon's job, was to do this. And the goal is obviously to let as many people out as possible that you can safely let out as possible, and letting the people that are most likely to reoffend, or keeping the people that are most likely to reoffend in jail. So I guess maybe the easiest thing to do if your goal was only to keep reoffenders off the streets would just be nobody gets bail. And then on the other side, you know, there's a different side of that spectrum. And so that's why we have a judge, and the judge tries to figure out in a very brief period of time meeting with this person whether they'd be a good person to be out on the street for the next 9 months while they're waiting for their trial, or if they are not a good person for that. So they ran Judge Solomon against the model of Judge Solomon. And so a research team assembled the records for over 500,000 defendants tried in New York State, and found that the state had released just over 400,000 of them. So 80% of the time a person goes before that kind of a judge in New York State, or during the period of time that they studied, you had about an 80% chance of getting bail, 20% chance that you wouldn't. So the research team curated its own list of 400,000 people. So they took the same 500,000 cases, and their goal was, let's pick our 400,000 people to let out. The people from the research-defined list were 25% less likely to commit a crime while on bail. So market improvement, if you're worried about recidivist or reoffenders being out on the street. And the human judges released nearly 50% of the defendants considered to be in the top 1% to reoffend and commit crimes. Yeah, so, and keep in mind, this is a model that's built by judges. So the results were from a study conducted between 2008 and 2013, by the way. So it reminded me of this meme. I'll let you read that. Okay, so yes, I don't know if you've seen this before. So it's like a judge and he's eating. He's like, oh man, anyway, it's pretty dark. So the point is that these people are the victim of sometimes circumstances, or sometimes society is the victim of circumstances, where a judge has 20 minutes, 30 minutes to meet with a person, get an idea of what makes them tick, what's in their head, and try to apply their logic, which really comes down to a lot of gut feelings, and which is very fallible. So that's why it matters. Okay, after that, it's time for some mind bleach. Here's a box of kittens. Okay, all right. It's a happy talk. We'll get back into a good mood. Okay. As I alluded to before, IBM has been up to no good for quite a while, and we will talk about a chess match. So IBM sponsored the creation of this supercomputer called Deep Blue. Some of you are probably familiar with Deep Blue. Okay, so this was a supercomputer that was designed at Carnegie Mellon in the 1980s, designed specifically to play chess. And this guy, Garry Kasparov, was not designed in a lab to play chess, but a lot of people probably think he is the human most likely to have been. So Garry Kasparov, probably, I think one of the greatest chess players. I'm not a chess player myself, but one of the greatest chess players of all time. So he qualified for the USSR championship at age 15. If you don't know what USSR is, ask somebody with gray hair and they'll tell you. But it was big. It was big. It was big for a while there. And he was ranked the #1 in the world at age 20, and he was the world champion from 1985 up until the year 2000. So if anybody was going to beat a supercomputer designed to play chess, I would say it was probably Garry Kasparov. So can anyone beat IBM? No. The answer is no. No one can beat IBM. So they played 2 matches, one in 86 and one in 87. The first match, Deep Blue won the first game, which was the first time a computer had ever beat a human in a tournament-style match before. And eventually, Kasparov did win the match 4-2. But when they played again in 1987, Deep Blue ended up winning the match, which is the first time a computer had ever beaten a match in a tournament-style game before. So what is this? This is an example of technology eventually replacing us, becoming better at what we do. Is anybody a chess player in here? Are you familiar with the Stockfish project? Okay, Stockfish. Okay, so since 1987, the chess community has continued to build on the models, and they've become better and better. And, well, I don't want to spoil it for you, but anyway, that keeps happening. So how does this apply to me? This, code reviews, not a fan. So this is a quote from Amos King. So code reviews, I think, are a real hairy situation, right? It's like one time in our day that we usually have to interact, defend our decisions, and can be a real sticky human-to-human situation. So I try to pick out some examples from the onlines of people complaining about code reviews. This one's from Amos. So code reviews are great, but a bit like letting someone spend time to paint your house before checking out the exact color. So the cost of change is frustrating and expensive. Pairing is holding up samples and checking in consistently or constantly to make sure things are right. Here's a more succinct version. My number one roadblock to productivity is code review delays. Can anyone relate? Yes. If you're watching this later, all hands were up. Okay. A lot of times in code review, you get this one. Okay. Oh, that's great. Only a human can do that. I'm sure glad we haven't deferred that one to robots yet. So we get this one a lot. If you're very lucky, you might get this one. So I've used this one before. This is just being honest. So how can a computer replace us? We're so good at it. All right. So what are some AI options? What are some AI options for doing code reviews? So has anyone used Codium AI yet? Okay, good. You should. Codium AI integrates GPT into your editor if you use JetBrains or VS Code, and like catches things ahead of time, but will also review your code once you've posted a pull request. And another one that I've tried out is this one, CodeRabbit, which does a similar thing, I guess. This is an example of a CodeRabbit review. So like, hopefully this is okay, I'll get off camera, but like this is some code that was submitted, and CodeRabbit said, hey, you've got a format date function that's taking an argument called datetime, and I noticed that the format at the end uses this regex, which applies not just the date, but the time. So you've called it format date, but you should probably call it format datetime to be more accurate, which I think, I mean, to be honest with you, I think is a very good review comment, right? I think it's valid. And so then this guy was like, well, I mean, it's not wrong. And then CodeRabbit was like, hey, you're right. Like, this is just a suggestion, dude. Like, I think you're right. Like, so not only is it like useful, but it's also like polite, I guess, about things. So it's like, it's not the bad robot. It's like, it beats the hell out of Kevin. I'll tell you that. All right. So he will never watch this, by the way. He's in the Rust community now. He will never see this video. If you're Kevin, it's not you. If you're watching this, your name's Kevin, it's not you. All right. So if no one's reviewing my code, how can I make sure it's any good? So I think, to me, I broke this down into like 4 different kinds of issues. So number 1, you're a new programmer, and reviewing your colleague's code is a good way for you to learn. Okay. Issue number 2, I'm a new programmer, and the review gives me the confidence that the code I created is good. Valid. Number 3, I'm an experienced programmer, and sometimes I miss things. Also valid. Number 4, I am the best programmer, and I need to know all my colleagues' code is perfect. Not valid. This is a people problem, folks. So I think for number 1 and number 2, I'm with Amos. Pairing is the better solution to this. Don't do it in a code review. A code review is the last chance to do this, and probably the least good place to do this. You should be pairing with people. It will help you learn. Number 3, I think this could be solved with pairing, but I honestly think that even the state that GPT is at right now, issue number 3 could probably be solved by technology. Issue number 4 is a people problem. This is not a technical problem. This is a person problem. If you relate to number 4, well, I hope you don't relate to number 4. I'll just say that. All right. So is there a hybrid approach? Can we be friends? So going back to chess, like there was a period of time, a pretty long period of time, when the best chess players were the hybrid players. They're called cyborgs. Sorry, I'm looking at you because I think you know about this. Okay, so there was a period of time when people were like, well, machines are good at this, humans are good at that, but the best players were actually the cyborg players. So they were humans applying the suggestions of the computer models. And I think with Stockfish, it's sort of leaned more away from the human interaction in that. Yeah, is that fair to say? Okay. It kind of violates the premise of my talk, but I think it's the truth. Okay, yeah. So you're a hybrid, which is maybe like your marriage, where they say do this and then you just do that and don't ask a lot of questions. All right. Did I mention I'm recently divorced? So don't take my advice. Okay. Anyways, Copilot. Changing subjects. Copilot. So many of you have probably heard of Copilot. Some of you have probably used Copilot. Copilot is the AI coding assistant elevating developer workflows. It is elevating developer workflows. So I've heard a lot of feedback that Copilot is not any good, comes up with subtle errors, etc. I think, okay, that's probably true, but I think you're looking at it the wrong way. Maybe Copilot is not there to replace you. It's there to replace another tool that we've been using for years, Stack Overflow. So we've been wholesaling code into our code bases for years. So before Stack Overflow, we copied code from books, actual paper books. So experience is knowing what code is good and what code is bad. So a good amount of our code is just glue code that's not particularly meaningful or novel. Sorry. So where we started, like anybody start here, this is where I started my coding journey, BB Edit. Maybe use Notepad. Maybe you use punch cards. Okay, so I think of Copilot as just being compared to our modern IDEs, I think of Copilot as just being the next generation of that. Instead of being like this huge technological leap, it is like I literally used to punch these into punch cards, and now I have an IDE that will spell check or will check the name of a variable and let me know when I'm being an idiot. This is from the Pragmatic Programmer's book from Dave Thomas and Andy Hunt, but this one was said by Dave Thomas. The craftsmanship in software will never be obsolete. So remember that. The stuff that you do is creative. The craftsmanship that you put in will never be obsolete. There won't be a technology that will replace that. When people look at code from 50 years ago, the languages are dead, the problems are dead, the solutions are dead. There's new ways to do things, but you will recognize the craftsmanship that was put into particular solutions. But a lot of the work we do is not fine art. It looks like this. So this is a really bad Java accessor, but these are all over the place. And so anyone that says that Copilot is useless, I would argue that there are a lot of places where you could make 2 keystrokes and have this be written for you and documented and a test written for you without you having to do it yourself. That to me is what Copilot is for. So I recently, are we doing okay on time? Oh, 2 minutes. Wrap it up. Okay, so I would argue, so recently I had an experience where I just had to type out a bunch of US states and get them an abbreviation and put them into a list that looks like this. That's what I use Copilot for. This is a representation of a painting called Nighthawks by Edward Hopper, 1942, American artist. And it's hanging up at the Art Institute of Chicago. It's a beautiful painting. And I want you to think of your creative code as that painting. Now, what people don't see is equally important is the lights that are used to show the painting, the gray wall that's holding that painting up, the air conditioning that exists in that building, all the things that go around that painting to make it possible for you to use that painting, view the painting, enjoy the painting. That's what you should be working on. All this other stuff around here, that's what computers should be working on. Let humans do what only humans can do and nothing more. Thank you.